Welcome back to East Asia International Management. We are talking not only about Korean management, but we're also going to be talking quite a bit today about how you guys can manage yourselves with Korean management, maybe in any class, but especially for this class with your personal development of research projects so that you can get into some type of Korean management, Korean company, talking with executives in companies or organizations. So hopefully that stuff's clear. We've covered a lot of these details already. We've started talking about how most of Korea is controlled by big companies, those big conglomerates called chaebols. Everybody's aware of Samsung, one of the biggest in Korea, and then Hyundai, SK, LG, Lotte. There's several. This is information from January 2017, but it's simplified details. And instead of Samsung Group, it's saying Samsung Electronics is part of this. Same thing with Hyundai. Rather than Hyundai Group, it's saying Hyundai with Kia and everything inside is part of this. So we were looking at how these huge conglomerates in Korea are huge overall. Like Samsung Electronics, as of 2018, several years ago, 248 trillion won, approximately $240 billion. But then Samsung Electronics is also part of many other organizations, which are all part of the Samsung Group. Same thing for Hyundai Motor, which is the same thing as Kia Motor, etc. And then Hyundai Mobis and Hyundai Asset Investment. There's many different subsidiary companies that are so big you don't know they're subsidiaries overall. Then we have information with the rank in 2020 and the rank predicted for 2021. They're huge, and these companies are generally growing. Then we talked also about how these companies use the idea of the art of war, and they use the idea of guangxi incredibly well, so that every member of the family that's controlling part of the company, whether it's Hyundai or Samsung, you have the founding father, and then their son is married to somebody else that owns another group, and that other group can have a positive effect on your group, and then your children, same thing. That type of guangxi, that type of networking, that type of connection is very important. And so we talked in our class about the whole idea when you are going to be doing your work in anything, not just with a class, look outside. Who are the companies that you want to have connections with? And very, very important, this green area, the idea of the alumni. Who actually is connected with you, whether you like them or not, whether they're crazy uncles or drunk aunts or whatever, there are connections that can impact your business going forward, especially in Korea, Japan, China. So make sure you're aware of that. Are there any students here that are already aware of some alumni that have graduated and moved on, but are you are able to contact them to get some association or benefits? Anybody here aware of graduates from Kim Young University yet?
So actually, I have one alumni who works in a big, I'm in a big company, but I don't think that it is that big enough like travel or to get interview or something.
Okay, good. It's nice that you're aware of somebody. But then we come back to this whole idea of, where is it here? This. Maybe that alumni that you know of, you think it's just a regular small alumni, you think the company he's working from is not that big, but maybe he's connected somehow to some whole completely other group. Maybe his girlfriend or his cousin or his father is running some other group that you want to join, or a group mate or company mate wants to connect with. So keep that in mind. This complex web of connections. In Canada, where I come from, we say spider webs are gross, disgusting, bad. We try not to think about them. But if you apply them to success, if you apply them to guangxi, if you apply them to how Korea and East Asia operates, it's vital. You really need to try to find out who is around you at all times. I would suggest one of the biggest benefits of anybody going through any school, whether it's elementary school or PhD studies, would be the other students in your group. So try to find out who they are, stay in touch with them, and they will probably be very close and helpful and closer. Sorry, one more time. They will be very close to you and probably more helpful to you than a lot of other sources, even consultants trying to help you. So hopefully that helps. And then when you realize that the connections of powerful people are usually very, very powerful people. When we start talking about that top 1%, that the chaebols are definitely the top 1%, and they control almost everything. Are you guys aware when we were talking about the idea of how money is very important? This whole idea of the top 1% generally control, what is it, 40-50% of, easily the top 20, the top 1% easily control much more than the top 20% of all assets or all money in the world. And the top 10% control something like 80% of the world. Keep that in mind. Your networking is really important. I'm not saying be money focused. I'm not saying be capitalistic. I'm just saying be aware of how important it is to work with others. In addition to studying this whole idea of Korean management and global and cultural differences, we're also focused on students presenting your research plans or your survey plan this week. And what I'd really like you to talk about, I know Pia is going to present some information, and don't change your information yet, Pia, but everybody else in class, try to think, before we hear anything from Pia's group, try to think, is Pia considering surveying that top 1% or the alumni? And why? Is she going, it has her questions or has her strategy to present something taken into consideration that some other alumni are already probably running some of these big companies? So whatever your question is, and however you plan to ask it, check that background. Is that clear? Any other questions before I let Pia go ahead and start sharing your details? No?
Can I share my screen?
If you're with Pia's group, sure, yes. You should be able to share your screen already.
So I will start. Today we will continue with our topic, how can employers and HR managers manage cultural differences in an international company like Samsung. Today we will talk specifically about survey and what are we planning to ask. We will also go through some questions that we have for workers outside of the company. And we will also talk about why are we doing that and what are we trying to find out with the survey. So who are we planning to ask? We are planning to ask employees and managers through surveys in different departments that are currently working in Korea. And we will try to connect to them via LinkedIn and other social media platforms. And our main focus will be on searching for alumni that are working specifically for Samsung. We will also try to email the HR and try to get to people that are in the higher management positions. And the survey will be anonymous.
So surveying question for people at Samsung includes someone, if you think that about cultural, someone think about cultural diversity, would they rather see it as a chance for innovation or as a possible source of problems, and why? And we will also ask them about, do they think for Samsung as a multicultural company, and why? What could be aspects that should be improved? And also, who do they think this thing is the main target group of Samsung? And Also, we will ask, please think of some ways to manage cultural diversity, either from their experience or their own ideas. And also, we will ask, please explain if they think the productivity of in the market and the working environment in the cultural diversity team is different from non-multicultural environment and why. These are the questions that we will ask for them.
And for the following part, these are the questions we're going to ask from people who work at Samsung. So what do you think are the main differences between Korean culture and foreign cultures? And how many people with a different cultural background are working in your team or your division? Please tell us about your working experience working with a multicultural team. And the next one, what do you think are the advantages or disadvantages of cultural diversity? And the next one, what are your thoughts on working in a multicultural team and why would you like or dislike to work in teams with a cultural difference? And last one, if you could choose, would you prefer working in teams with or without cultural diversity? And if yes, why? So these are the our questions for the second part.
Now the last slide, what are we trying to find out with the survey? So as we already said, we're trying to survey people at Samsung. We try to ask open-ended questions so that they won't have yes or no answers and we get a bit more input. We ask these questions because we want to know if the workers at Samsung have experience with multicultural teams. And we also want to know a bit more about their insight, like their thoughts about diversity and if they see it as something good or bad. Then we would also like to ask if they have ideas to manage cultural diversity or maybe experience already and what they think should or could be improved in the company in the future. Also, why are we doing this? As Mr. Professor Watts already said, we should consider the bigger picture. So we are doing this survey to make connections and also to develop ourselves further into experts and to use this new knowledge to maybe work for companies like Samsung in the future. Okay, that's it for our presentation. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions, suggestions? I think only Javok here is not in our group. So maybe
Jaguar, it's your turn.
Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry, I was in subway. I listened to your presentation. I really like it. I appreciate your.
Do you have some comments or any evaluation for them?
Yeah, I would give a 9 out of 10 for the presentation.
Since you do have a lady speaking on the subway behind you, you're off the hook this time. And I think it's cool that we are able to use the technology. So with that said, I am sending you guys a little bit of information in our chat right now. It is information for all of you guys. If I show you my screen right now, you see this is a long file. It's 9 pages long. In other classes, we've started to go through it. I'll summarize it in a bit, but there's questions related to how to ask professional questions and in many languages, how to translate things, what is valuable, what's not valuable. There's also the whole idea of our class requirements goes through and shows you a lot of this information. It shows you how you're supposed to plan for your goals, how you're supposed to work with other people around you. And at the beginning, maybe you thought it was just a cute picture. Professor Watts is such an awesome artist. He put this together. But now that we've gone through 6 weeks together, I would like your own comments. So I heard, Pia, you were saying that you plan to get in perhaps to some of these companies. What is it that you are able to offer some executive if you just walk up to them, knowing that most companies in Korea are very hierarchical, which means if they are a powerful executive and they think you're a student, they will think perhaps that you're not on their level, so they're not supposed to talk to you. I know some great people with huge hearts that really care about students, and yet he's so powerful, he thinks if he gives his name card to students, he is insulting the students, leading a bad example, and making his organization look bad. So even though he's dedicated to helping young students, and he's very able to help students, he doesn't share his name card, and he won't answer questions if you just walk up to him without a proper introduction. So again, how are you going to offer value or get some executive to talk to you or listen to you? Anybody in Pia's group.
I mean, I guess we could introduce ourselves as the research group that we are. So maybe not say that we're students, but what we're actually trying to help them, because we, with our research, we do want to develop a plan for them to help them in the future. So I think that should be valuable for them.
Okay, UNO, I'd like to jump on you. Are you still here? Can I don't see you in the, is UNO? He was in the group. I think he just left the group. Other people are, no, you're still there? Okay. Since you are Korean and you've just heard some other person, Pia, has said she planned, let's pretend you are a vice president of Samsung. First of all, UNO, if you are the vice president of Samsung, how old approximately do you think you are?
Maybe 50.
Okay. And how old, this is kind of rude perhaps, but how old do you think Pia is? Make sure you say a good number, otherwise she's going to kick you.
Maybe 24.
Okay. And so if you are in your 50s and she is 24, and she walks up to you, even before she says anything, even though she's dressed to be a professional consultant or researcher, what are you going to be thinking? You know she's about to start talking to you. What's flashing through your mind?
Maybe an enthusiastic, hardworking student looking for her career in the future, and I might be able to be offer some help for her.
Okay, that's very kind of you. You have a great heart. If you're the vice president of Samsung, how many hundreds or thousands of people have done that to you already, would you guess? And the overall, are you tired of that happening? Or do you think after being 50 years old, you still like it when random young people walk up to you to start talking to you? My point is, just correct me if I'm wrong, but my point is a lot of executives in Korea, especially the powerful ones, soon as a young person walks up to them, they're probably going to be thinking, oh, wow, judging now, ego boya, you know, that thing of this is going to be a headache. Who's this trying to bother me? I'm at a high level. This person's not probably experienced. Why are they bothering me? UNO, do you think my perception is completely crazy? Or is there probably a lot of traditional 50-year-olds in Korea that think that?
Maybe there are many high-ranking people who sing, as you have said.
Okay, so how could you turn it around? Knowing that in Korea or in Japan and in China, young people are usually stereotyped. I'm not saying it's always true, but I'm saying young people are usually stereotyped with having very little or no experience, and young people are usually associated with having very little or no money. So you usually have to take up your time, stop doing what you were doing, and help them because they don't know what they're doing and they don't have money to do it. So what, as a young person, what is some advice? Anybody, Pia, what could you do? Rather than just walk up and say, I'm a president of a company or a culture or whatever, just the fact that you're a young person, that's a stereotype that has a value in some parts of East Asia. And it is changing, but we still need to understand a lot of these older people running these organizations that you're targeting will have these views. What could you do? And I'm not even talking about the whole idea of you may be a guy or you may be a girl, and that may attract that older person to certain thoughts right there. So to get over these other stereotypes, what else could you do? Yeah, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't approach them in person because it's not possible at the moment, maybe we could possibly disguise that we're young, but that's probably not the answer that you're searching for.
Okay, no, some students will send emails and their email automatic signature says, I'm a student of this class or student of this program, a student of this university. Obviously, you may want to tailor that email signature that you like. Now you know that the listeners, your target people, are going to be looking for something else. Saying you're a researcher or you're working on this project may be more attractive than just saying you're a student. Okay, that's one thing. Good. What else?
I think that it is more like long-term idea, but I have seen somewhere that it might be really useful to basically connect with them on LinkedIn and ask them some questions and kind of like let them know that we really like what they are doing and that one day we would like to be in their shoes. And then like every like half a year, we try to talk to them a little bit and we might share something about ourselves and just like become closer to them. So then when we would come up to them in a year or two, they would already know us and like feel maybe like they should help us because they have certain connections with us.
Okay, if you identify you have a connection with them, like you are an alumni, or if you're from the same state or from the same, even if it's elementary school, middle school, high school, some people might not talk about that as alumni in other countries, but here in East Asia, it is quite a good connection. So any way that you can talk about how you have a connection, that would be good. The spider web of contacts that I'm showing on the screen, much more valuable here in Korea than in many other countries. So think about that connection you have. Okay, and what else? Hint, hint. Check your monitors.
I think it would be difficult to connect with them in person. So I guess it would be like a little bit easier to send an email or connect them with via LinkedIn.
Right, as I was saying. So the other thing was, for example, I am not that powerful, but there's a good chance that almost every day I will just very quickly in a couple of seconds go through. I have about 8 different email accounts. I will go through and delete at least 50, if not sometimes 250 email, just based on the subject line. The subject line and who I think is sending it. Automatically delete 50 to 150 email every day. So how are you going to get that? And what I'm showing on the screen again is the idea that we have very valuable, world's most reliable, most respected information that a lot of the world doesn't have. Samsung, for example. I know Samsung pays millions of dollars for consulting details. And I was working with them when they paid lots of money to get the world's best consultants to give reports. But those best results are usually from consulting companies. And as we talked before, like Gartner Consulting is one of the world's highest tech consulting provider of information and reports that they like. But even then, they don't usually use this. They don't use the best scientists. They don't use the best academic minds or research models. So sharing this stuff alone is pretty valuable. Make sure that this is in your mind when you're trying to contact some other people. Make sure when you walk up to somebody and you're trying to network with them, a lot of them are going to ask, who are you? And what is your age? Or where are you from? And it's not to be rude. They're not trying to be rude related to the age. They're trying to be identify where in their spider web of contacts of thousands or millions of people do you fit. If you are, number one, a young person and you're not in their spider web, maybe they're not supposed to be talking to you, period, unless you show you are from a certain company. And we're going to be talking more about how Hyundai is famous for being very frugal. Hyundai has developed itself from basically a farmer to now they're a bunch of factory workers. Even the top executives of Hyundai are supposed to wear blue type of factory worker management clothing. But Samsung is supposed to look like what? Thomas, do you remember what Samsung workers are supposed to look like? What is their culture?
I remember that you said that if someone wants to work for Samsung, especially in the past, that they had to have their phones and their cars that are no older than 3 years.
Correct.
So like supporting the brand and also being someone like involved or like have the brand involved in their own life.
Good, have their own brand. Are they allowed to, do they like, I'll give you a hint. Coca-Cola, for example, almost never sponsors or associates with events that may have other drink companies involved, especially if they're going into a new area where some people in the audience may think that other drink company is better or more famous than Coca-Cola. So when Coca-Cola is associating with drinks, if you want them to sponsor you, it must be clear that Coca-Cola is going to be the #1 drink company at that event. If there's any question of that, the chances of Coca-Cola working with you, sponsoring, or even associating with you are almost zero. Is there some relationship to either Hyundai or Samsung? Do you know, is Samsung like a #1 focused company or just a modest company that doesn't mind starting and looking new in new industries?
Yeah, they have been always looking for new industries because they have money for investing.
Okay, that's true. They have so much money, they're always investing to grow. But do they like appearing to be a completely new, unproven organization in an area? Or is Samsung usually associated with being #1? Usually the unwritten rule at Samsung is they're supposed to be looking the best. They're supposed to be looking almost like models. They're supposed to be looking like they're #1 in their area. If you go into your office, even if you do get hired at Samsung and you walk into your office with old ripped clothes and messy hair and you're not really taking care of yourself, there's a very difficult chance of getting promotions and even continuing with your job. You have to make the whole organization look #1. And so that idea spills over to you guys. When you're contacting these organizations, understand their background, understand what they're interested in, and understand the networks are vital. Why, again, am I talking about this? If you contact a Samsung organization and you are a new organization, they may not talk to you. Usually you have to prove you are the best researcher or you have the best research in the world. If you just say, I am a researcher, they probably already have thousands of researchers. So try to fit their profile or what they're looking at. Try to understand their culture and fit into their culture in order to be accepted. And so that web of contacts, how you should understand that when they're hiring people, they're going to be hiring maybe hundreds or thousands, and you need to get apart from that group to stand out. Make sure also that whole idea that you could be working also with grants, or you could be publishing details. The whole idea of you publishing something about this special executive may attract them more than the content in your research paper alone. Something to think about. And of course, alumni. Make sure you try to bend over backwards, try to find out who is some alumni, and most of those alumni should be trying to connect with you, especially if you are part of an alumni group here active with the university. If somebody from a group contacts an individual and you turn them down, if they're part of that group, maybe the whole group's going to know, that's harder on that target executive than if it's just one student. Again, that group mentality. Hopefully that helps you guys. With that said, there's lots of things. The whole idea, we've already gone through referencing. You guys are referencing well, but most executives may not understand what is good referencing or bad referencing. And they most definitely will not understand what's the difference between Web of Science and Scopus or just a regular magazine. Be aware of those details. You must understand, where is it? It must be at the beginning. That slide that talks about the quality of, here it is. This slide that shows the quality of information, generally Web of Science or WOS or SSCI, standing for Social Science Cited Indexed journals. Those are usually the best, but very few people know about those and know that they are better than Scopus. Scopus is sort of a much bigger organization, but more open, and they accept more details. Just promoting that is good. And then you also understand that lots of people, lots of executives, they do have money. They're going to sign up and pay for these popular journals like Harvard or Fortune or Forbes, but still they may not understand that because these don't reference themselves, this other information is scientifically much more valuable. So even if they have this, you can still offer more value. Hopefully that helps. What about the whole idea of, as we said, publishing? Pia, did you have any idea about publishing? Or is there anybody here in class that you know that you have your at least one page of introduction should be done, one page of background literature should be done? Week 6, 7, 8, and 9, we're talking about the methodology, how you survey and develop that stuff. That is going to be done. You only need to do it in a PPT, but if you put it into a journal format, then whoever you contact, whoever you survey, if you take a photo of them, if they allow it, and take their name, if they allow it, you could put them into a publication. Some people like the idea of being, into a TV show or radio show or a book or journal or in a newspaper article. So keep those in mind. Sometimes the content of your research, even though it should be the most important, doesn't always make it to the top. There are billions of people in the world that are working very hard, but don't make it to the top because they're not aware of the guanxi and the art of war or the game of life. So what about Jacobir or Yasser, if things are quieter for you? Any of you, any comments on how you might be able to interact with your project beyond just asking a survey to anyone? Any ideas of how you could use this to grow yourself or to develop even more?
I think it would be it would help if we could make some introduction video or some kind of like visual introduction to our survey to kind of give them an idea about what's going to happen or what we mean.
Okay, that could be good. When where was it? When we were talking about this, what I'm showing on the screen here, Forbes, Fortune, Harvard Business Review, they are incredibly valuable. And at the same time, they may not be reliable because they don't use the scientific method and reference details. So why are they valuable? They're valuable because they have many followers. And so if you have videos of many followers, that will be very good for you. In an email, just sending a link to a stranger, most strangers shouldn't click on it unless they know exactly who you are and what you're talking about. Some people might think they're viruses or something like that. But online, if you can develop yourself and have many followers, that's great. Try to do a video of your research presentation. I'll give you extra points in class for that.
Professor?
Yes, an email, it might not work too well. Go ahead.
May I have my presentation about LinkedIn?
You sure can. So we've had one group already present. Thomas is presenting now. Any other presentations today?
Can you see? Yeah,
Yes,
right now, is it?
Yes.
Okay, so Today I have a presentation about LinkedIn. Down there you can see where you can find me personally on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's that. Next, LinkedIn is social media that not many like young people use. However, it is really important for our future connections, and it can be also really helpful to us. So the first question that we should probably ask ourselves is why to have a LinkedIn profile. It is a form of personal branding. We are more visible, which means that we are able to get more job offers and opportunities. And candidates who include a robust LinkedIn profile on their resume have a 71% higher chance of landing an interview, which was on cultivatedculture.com. And also interesting thing is that about 1/3, or like it is a estimate that 1/3 of high position people are on LinkedIn. First thing that we should focus on is our profile picture. It should be a close-up. We should be looking into the camera. We should smile, have a neutral background, and we should be dressed appropriately, meaning that we shouldn't have too many accessories. For example, we shouldn't have glasses or a hat. And there you can also see 3 tools that can be really helpful. One of them is remove background. So that is really helpful if you have a picture, but you have background that you do not really want to use. So you don't have to go into Photoshop yourself, and it will actually do it for you. Another one is photofeeler.com. That is a site where you can upload your picture and people will give you a feedback about your picture, and they will tell you how do they like it and how do, like, they will talk about who they think that you are just from the picture without knowing you, which is also really useful. And the third one is probably the most known one, and that is canva.com. Which I will be also talking about later, but it is basically a tool that is for free. There is also paid in Photoshop and can be also really, really useful. Then we will be talking about Canva a little bit. So on the background picture, it should seem professional, and it should show something from our area of expertise and give a little details about ourselves. So you can see on the right side, it is actually the canva.com. So like it is how it actually looks. And you can see that you can click there on social media, and completely on the right, the last one is LinkedIn banner. And on the picture below, you can see how many different templates there is. Some of them are paid, the ones with the little yellow crown, but you can also use the free versions. A lot of people use the template that I selected, the biggest one, and put it there, for example, social media or some kind of contacts on the screen of the laptop. Then there is the headline. Headline is a piece of the text under your name on LinkedIn. And there is, of course, many ways how to structure it. But one of the best ones that I was able to find is that you put your job title, behind it your company name, and some keywords. You can see a good example on the right on the top from Sarah. And down there is once again from culture. I'm not sure. Cultivated culture, I think, from that side. And it is once again, there is more tips on how to grow on LinkedIn. And then we have country and region. I found that tip in one YouTube video that is also written later on. And I feel like it is something that not many of us would think about and that can be really useful. And that is that we should use the place of where we want to work and not where we currently live, because many of us want to work abroad, for example. So we would be automatically listing ourselves in the place where our future potential employer will be looking for his employees. Another one is contact information. We can actually create our unique URL, which is better for ranking on SEO. And we can do it in the section Me, View Profile, and Edit Profile URL. So at the start of my presentation, you could see that I already changed it to just Thomas Mamua, which is much easier to remember and also better for ranking, as I said. Then we have the summary. We can create our summary in Add section, About, and Summary. And we should be telling our story in first person. We should use percentages and numbers because it is much better if we give people more details. Like if you hear that I had a really big impact on a company, it's great, but it is much better if you hear that I'm responsible, let's say, for 30% of their revenue from last year. We can also add skills. So if you are currently seeking a specific job, you can go to a description of the position that you are seeking for on LinkedIn. You can copy and paste it into monkeylearn.com or other similar pages. And it will give you keywords that you can then use for your profile. So once the employer of the specific listing is looking for people, they will be able to find you better. Of course, you shouldn't be lying, but you can pick some words that suit you and also the future job. LinkedIn members with 5 or more skills listed are 33% more likely to get messaged by a recruiter and receive 17 times more profile views, which figured out Catherine Fisher. And we should also not use too many bullet points. They should be just used to break the text for the eye, so it will be much easier to read. Now I have some little tips. We should follow people from our area of expertise. We should also make daily connections. Important is also to post there something as to, for example, as we do on our Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, because not many people do it. So we will be, once again, a little bit, we will differentiate ourselves. And endorsements and recommendations are the equivalent of letters of reference. So there's a tactic that I will give a reference to, for example, my professor, and one reference back. And then I also wanted to talk about free courses that we can list on LinkedIn, and we can have some of them on codecademy.com, for example, which there are some courses on HTML, CSS, Python, and other programming languages. Another one is Skillshare.com. There are also some courses on Microsoft.com. Google has also some of them, I think, and we can also get a certification, which can be really attractive to our future employer. And I think that even Harvard gives some classes for free. I don't think that you get really a certification from Harvard, but I'm not sure about that. But they started it when there was the pandemic. And here are my personal 3 connections. I will, of course, try to get more connections in the future, but those are the 3 that I have so far. And here are my resources. So actually, there wasn't one of the slides that was talking about putting there also your past job description. It shouldn't be too long, but it should be Um, it shouldn't be too long, and it shouldn't be too short. Once again, you can include percentages and numbers that are much better than just general words. And you should also talk about what did you do, how long did it take, and what impact it had on the company. And that is everything for today. Thank you.
Very good. One thing that I would note, since we're focusing on Korean management this week, is while LinkedIn is something that you should all be in and you should all be using, no question about that. However, in Korea, the Korean market is very much themselves, just like the Chinese market is very sort of exclusive. In Korea, Google is not used as much as Naver, for example, for internet searches. LinkedIn is very, very good, but there's a Korean version, which I think it's called Linked Now, which is more popular in Korea than just LinkedIn. So the same thing in China. They have the YouTube around the world versus in China, they have the Youku in China. Understand these main points, understand and use these technologies for working globally. Increasingly, the world is going to be working globally, but in Korea, a lot of people will be using certain things. Why? Why is it important? Because increasingly, artificial intelligence is taking over the world, whether we know it or not. Simple, small things like you type in, you want to be, I don't know, a marketing manager, but in Korean, they may be looking for the Korean characters, the Hangul, saying 과장님, and that's written in different words. So the writing in Korean might have a different value than writing the same word just translated into English. In Korea, obviously, Korean dominates. In China, obviously, the Chinese dominates. Use those things for talking about it. Any other comments? I'm really excited about what he just said. Before I blabber on about what we just heard.
I really liked it. I learned a lot as a newbie in LinkedIn. I got a lot of new information how I could or should improve my profile.
Okay, I congratulate you, Thomas, for presenting that. Something tells me that you found a lot of that stuff online, and the sources where you found that information were really good. It wasn't just a simple thing. For example, you were showing very good presentation about LinkedIn, but it wasn't just about LinkedIn on October 8th, 2021. It was designed for the future. Like the words you were talking about saying you're supposed to be using, you didn't use the word keyword or key skills, but you were saying things like use point form and just use the important words. Well, that's because those are key words, and the software systems will look for that, and they won't work on just saying the or and or of, those small words that don't get picked up at all. Another thing that you might not have focused on, how about, yes, sir, and you don't know, how about I give, and Pia, all of you, I'll give you a challenge. With Thomas's presentation, he was talking about the background and your address. Any comments about that? Do you remember what he said and why he talked about that? He didn't actually explain it. He just gave the basic details, and you were supposed to know it. But there's a lot more to it. Why you're supposed to know it this way, he didn't actually explain. What he said was true, but it's maybe more important than what he actually even said. That whole idea.
For the address, he said it's easier to find the person, I think.
Okay, can you explain a little bit more? What do you mean about the address? Can you explain a little
because
bit more?
it was just LinkedIn and then the name, and I think my LinkedIn is a lot of numbers and hard to memorize. So his should be a lot easier to find.
You can customize your LinkedIn name from your number to a code. My LinkedIn is, I think, LinkedIn at Watts S, something like that. But yeah, that's good. What I was talking about is the whole idea of culture. You know what you know, And he didn't actually say it, but nobody cares about you or where you are or what you're sort of doing now. They care more about them. So if you want a job in New York, you're supposed to be using an address closer to New York, or you're supposed to use a background image of New York, or you're supposed to design your LinkedIn not for what you like about right now. You're supposed to design your LinkedIn for that dream job that you want. Those type of things. If I go through it, you had a very good professional discussion. You started talking about how everybody is supposed to just have their face there, and that is professional almost anywhere in the world. But there are certain people that are sick and tired of this fake smiling in front of other people. And if you're trying to get a job with that guy, that type of job may like a photo that is more active of you actually doing the job. For example, if you want to do volunteer helping refugees, a photo of the side of your head bending down, picking up a building that's covering a body, that will probably have much better impact if you want to get that refugee helping job, rather than just sitting there in a suit and tie. So again, doesn't matter what you're really thinking of. Think of who is it that you're making this for? Who do you want the job with? What do they want? Do they want to see more active? That's a personal decision that you'll have to make yourselves. Showing active scene or the back of a helping some group may have an enormous value depending on the target that you have in LinkedIn. Great to talk about how you must show yourself for the target, not just your current reality. Research that target company well. Everybody is supposed to be talking about your survey questions now. This is week 6. Well, if you really understood the design of our course, I didn't really plan you guys to do much surveying until week 8. So this is a complete practice, because I want your questions not just for your mind. I want the questions, the wording in your questions, maybe to show you are already a specialist to that valuable person that you target that might be an executive you'll meet in week 8. And that type of thing, for example, if you walk up to UNO and he's the vice president of Samsung, some executives, they may take the subway. You may meet them, and you still can meet people in Seoul. There are, restaurants and things open. There's places people are going around. But make sure you design it to impress them. I've had several people go into a meeting or an interview with me when I was working with Korean companies, and they ask me, what does my company do? I write a note saying, not this candidate. Or if they ask, what is our department focused on? What are we trying to do? X through that candidate. I'm not going to hire them. If they're not going to research me, don't waste my time. And that's something I learned that the executives of big companies want. Even though the Korean system requires they hire fresh new graduates from school, just that have the highest numbers, and then they'll train you for several weeks or months. So that there's something you got to think about. Don't just blabber on, saying blah, 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 talking with someone. Get to the point, use those point form, but more importantly, use the keywords and key skills. The idea of certificate courses. You promoted Coursera, Udacity, things like that. Great. Those companies give free courses. They say they give, let me just back up. They give courses, they give education, and they started and they promote themselves as sources of free education. However, most of them are, like Coursera is definitely a profit-focused company. And although they say they have free courses, you have to give your credit card number before you can get in at all. And then you have a short time to watch it for free. But if you want the certificate, if you want to keep watching 21 hours, you have to start charging your credit card, sometimes hundreds or thousands of dollars. So they're still good, but also be aware of Allison.com. It has much less charging. It's much more free courses, or edX. which is a combination of MIT and Harvard, and NPTEL, which is the National Program Technology Enhanced Learning, which is the Indian government is made, so that Allison, NPTEL, edX, they're focused on just giving out free education, period. Coursera charges quite a lot of money. Whatever you're going to do, if you have the money, get the certificate. It will help. Increasingly, it's becoming more important than just blabbing about, I went to this university. Thank you very much for that. We have, I understand, about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to go through and show you more of these details. Let's make sure you guys can see all of this. So we've already gone through, we've talked about how the government developed the country first by giving funding and preferential treatment to people that were developing what the government wanted. Those grew into companies, got the funding, grew incredibly fast. Those are called the big conglomerates, or the chaebol in Korea, the Keidanren or the Zaibatsu. There's different names for them in different countries, whether it's Japan or Korea or China. But in Korea, those conglomerates, the chaebol, they used to be comprehensive and diversified in many different ways. They are definitely very spider-webby as far as the ownership. Do you guys remember what is the organization that owns or controls Samsung Electronics? UNO, do you remember? South of Seoul.
What organization?
Yes, what organization basically is the owner or the holding, the trust company that holding company which controls Samsung Electronics? Correct. It is a joke. It is a game. It is a fun place just south of Seoul.
Everland?
Right. The Everland Group, or that holding company that nobody usually thinks about related to business, is the actual main Samsung company. They have the shares that control everything. And it goes back and forth lots. So we are aware of that. The idea of the largest groups, you were probably all aware of them. Do you remember any comments about Daewoo? Daewoo, some people think may have died because they were bad. Anybody remember what I was saying about how Lucky Gold Star changed into new groups and how Daewoo had to change?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but I think you said they had to pay back a lot of money very quickly, so they kind of became a scapegoat and went bankrupt.
Right. Samsung, Hyundai, Daewoo, they were all growing incredibly fast with billions of dollars from the government used to expand and make new factories and set up new businesses throughout Europe or the Middle East and around the world. And then when the Asian financial crisis came, Thailand was going bankrupt. Korea was afraid of going bankrupt. They had to repay a lot of money back to the IMF immediately. The government, rather than just saying everybody needs to pay a little bit, they just said, Daewoo, you have to pay everything back basically today, which was impossible. Daewoo was liquidated for those types of reasons. That's a simplification of what we're talking about. But why? Because the other companies were closer, they were supporting the government, and they had stronger Guangxi networking than Daewoo did. That's one of the arguments. So be aware the power of that Guangxi. We already talked about the ownership structure. It's usually going to the eldest son with the Confucian value. You're supposed to respect the idea that the government is supposed to take care of everybody in the country like a father takes care of their children. Then you have the father takes care of the son. And even in that wording, it doesn't say take care of all kids. It usually talks about the son, not the women. So the women still have a pretty strong glass ceiling to get through. Another thing that it is changing now, but the drinking culture, you're supposed to drink and have relationships with other people because in public, you're not supposed to complain to anybody. Even if your boss is making a mistake, publicly, you're not supposed to stop him or correct him. They're supposed to be correct. It was so strong, airlines were flying into mountains and hundreds of people were dying because the oldest person on the plane was the pilot, and even the co-pilots and the junior people that were right next to them for safety were afraid of correcting the older guy. And so much so they saw themselves flying in the buildings or mountains and things. It is changing fast. What about the drinking culture? Many people say you can't be successful in China, Japan, or Korea if you can't drink. That's not exactly correct. People haven't really done research on it and understand the main purpose. The main purpose is guangxi. The main purpose is you are supposed to have very strong connections, relationships, networks, friends that care about you and you care about them. And the idea, the simple idea for drinking is if you drink with somebody, they think that you're friends. Something about going out, getting drunk, doing 1 shots of alcohol, vomiting on somebody is supposed to build a closer bond. Now let's understand you have a relationship with that person, whether you get sick on them or hangovers with them or not, that is a relationship. Now, in the middle of the screen, we're talking about sons, and I talked about daughters. Isn't that much more important to know about, to have a relationship, than just having a drink of beer or whiskey or soju with somebody? And so Fiona Carley and the head of like HP and many high-tech companies, they were women for a while. And some people were saying they're not going to be very good because they're women and maybe women can't drink very well. Well, I have owned bars myself, and most of the drinking competitions were won by women. That's one point. But the other point is that the drinking is much less important than knowing the relationships. When you go to a meeting, if you find out that they have a son, or they find out or they have a daughter, or a hobby, or something they really care about, and then later you remember, you put down in your diary they have this daughter's birthday, or they're this year old or something, and you send a small little note or a small little gift for that child or for their hobby, that will elevate you in the relationship, elevate you in the guangxi much more than having a drink of beer. So you don't have to drink with them, but most people don't understand that. A lot of people may say if you don't drink with them, you're just not a friendly person. You're not a good person. So be aware of those details. We've talked about the K-type, the idea that top-down decision-making, compensation based on seniority, paternalistic leadership, harmony-oriented cultural values, the clan management managed by a group of people that are usually connected. What do all of these things mean? They're not usually bad. When we say this, some people in the Western world, they may think these are bad, these are insulting. What exactly does paternalistic mean when we describe Korean management? What is the alternative that Harvard says? Harvard says autocratic leadership. What is this talking about? What is this simple English word? Yes, sir. Do you understand that idea? I want to make sure all of these 5 ideas describing Korean management are understood. And paternalistic, what it generally means is fatherly leadership, or it could be motherly leadership, but not very many mothers are leading it. The head of several organizations now, several very powerful organizations in Korea, they are women, but that's not the typical situation. It's usually fatherly. So Pia, you have your hand up? Yes?
Yes, last time I didn't quite understand the difference between paternalistic leadership and clan management, because clan management also sounded quite family orientated.
Okay,
so.
clan is like a group of connected people. So whether it's a group of people from the same hometown, or a group of people from the same university, or a group of people from the same family, it's usually a group of people are connected. And like Samsung, it started with one man that grew up and was trained basically in Japan. He came back, he made this organization, then he gave it to his son, and then his son gave it to his kids. So that group of people are managing it. I know in other countries there could be a negative association with clan, But here it just means it's a connected group of people are managing. Try to understand what is that connection and how you can get into that connection. Sometimes they say you have to be part of blood in order to be at the top. Very few Korean organizations have non-blood people at the top. Is that clarifying details, Pia?
Thank you.
And the idea of seniority, what does this seniority mean with respect to Korean management? How about, yes, sir. Do you understand how Korean management is seniority based? What does that mean?
Seniority, like old people, leadership of old people. And
Yes.
Professor, I have a question with the paternalistic leadership.
Okay.
Isn't it parentalistic or paternalistic?
Paternalistic is the correct English, but you can understand it as parent style. It's
Because
just-
there's a term parentalism. I just searched it. And
That's
what is the
probably
difference?
that's a new term that's not usually associated with this at all. What this is talking about is fatherly leadership style. And even before they got, this is a politically correct term. It used to be called autocratic, or in Korea, they didn't use the English terms at all. It's basically fatherly style leadership. That, like, the father knows how much money the organization's making, and he just provides food on the table for the kids in the family. The kids in Korea usually don't know what the father's job really is. They usually don't know how much money the father's making. All of that stress, whether they're doing well or they have financial difficulties, that father takes on all of the responsibility by himself. And he doesn't usually give stress to anybody else in the family. Same thing in the companies. That top person knows almost everything, and lower level people don't know those details. And so what we talk about that is the centralization of information. In the West, especially in Scandinavia, Norway, Finland, Sweden, they have decentralized or equal-based management. Everybody has access to everything and everybody's equal. It's very different in Korea. What I meant by seniority is you have to put in the time. As soon as you join usually at the lowest levels, and you only get a promotion after maybe 3 years or 5 years, and then another promotion after another 3 years, 5 years, or 7 years. So that's what we mean by the seniority-based system. It's not exactly the merit-based like you have in Apple and other organizations like that. So we've talked about these things before. I'm just going to go through some of these things quickly. We have talked about Samsung. We have showed that Samsung was developed by one guy, that specific guy was developed himself, largely in Japan. And so he brought a lot of that Japan style and thinking style, management style back into Korea, which is controversial because a lot of Koreans, especially older Koreans, still hate the idea that Japan government and the military came and they took all of the valuables and good things from Korea and basically robbed the country. So older people are angry that Japanese management hasn't apologized yet. And so they don't like to have any association with some parts of Japan. But Samsung is largely Japanese. It's Japanese designed and run in many ways. They are changing a lot. Anyway, we've talked a lot about this. What I was saying earlier about the idea of Coca-Cola and Pepsi, Samsung usually wants itself to look like number one. Create itself, create innovation is their main goal, change everything. Young, speed, creativity, adaptability, yes, but almost everything is supposed to look like number one. As you can see in this, most people in Korea, especially traditionally, usually wear black and gray, dark color suits, especially top executives. However, you can see here wearing a light pink jacket or kind of a bright yellow jacket, these type of designer jackets, that is very exclusive in some sense to traditional Japanese style, being number one. You're supposed to look like the best, almost like a model. Things are changing though. Doosan Group, Pascal Group, the secret of the symbols. We're basically finished for today, but there's a lot to know. There was a research report done about the Doosan Group and the Pungsang Corporation, which actually, if you read it, it really identifies much of the Korean culture. So if you want more information about it, let me know. I can give you that book. It's out of print now, but understanding not just what is Samsung or Hyundai or SK, but why they work that way, how that networking impacts things, how you can get in to that web somehow is very important. So use our class to start developing yourself. Thank you very much for having this LinkedIn presentation, because that definitely helps a lot. Have a good day, guys.